Hi guys, we're back in at LT1 8-speed, cruising up the parkway with little effort. I want to talk a little bit about this combination because it's really become what I consider top of the line when it comes to engine conversions. Yeah, of course there's engines with 700 horsepower, 800 horsepower and all that, but we're just talking about the regular old everyday swap. It's interesting to compare the LT to the other V8s that are out there because it has so much technology built into it. If we look at an LS3 from the Gen 4 lineup, it had 10.7 to 1 compression ratio, about 430 horsepower, and ran a manual transmission. Now the counterpart to the LS3 was the L99 if you had an automatic, and it ran a 6-speed. Most of you know the Chrysler transmissions were pretty dismal up until the 8-speed. If we look at a 4-speed 45 RFE that came in the early JK, it was really a old transmission. It was old technology, it was high friction, it was high heat. It was definitely not ideal for these modern powertrains. It robbed horsepower from the 3.8 engine, and when you had that in a heavy JK, it just wasn't a good combination. When they went to the WA580, it was an improvement, a big improvement. But by the mid-2000s, GM introduced the 6L80 transmission, which was a modern clutch-to-clutch adaptive low-friction transmission. It had more diverse gearing, it could haul a heavy vehicle with more efficiency than the earlier 4-speeds and 5-speeds, and in my opinion was really a big part of doing an LS swap over anything else. In fact, we've had guys do LS swaps just to get the 6-speed transmission. The 6L80 is a little different than the 8-speed and the 10-speed in that it was a semi-clutch-to-clutch transmission where the 8-speed and the 10-speed went back to a more traditional valve body, but GM spent a lot of time on the development of the 10-speed. They went into collaboration with some other manufacturers like Ford, Honda, Toyota. They reduced all the weight that they could by using modern metals. They reduced the weight of the torque converter. Everywhere they could shave weight off, they did. However, even though they reduced the size and weight of these newer transmissions, they've kept the strength. The 8L90 is good for over 700 foot-pounds of torque. So we're putting these 8-speed and these 10-speeds behind LT1s and LT4s, engines that are capable of more than 600 horsepower. And it's difficult to describe the power output of an LT unless you actually drive one. Even a 5.3 exhibits that low-end torque like a diesel. And I thought about how I could describe the torque of the LT versus, let's say, the LS and the Hemi. And I'm thinking way back to when I used to ride motorcycles. Now, my brother was a supercross racer in the 70s and 80s, won a lot of races, and I always rode the 125s or the 250s. He concentrated in the open class, which was the 500cc bikes. And if you got on a 500cc, especially a 4-stroke bike, you give it some throttle and it just ripped out of the hole. With a 2-stroke 125, you had a really peaky power band. You had to rev it up, get it into that power band, and then keep it there by shifting a lot. Well, that's kind of how the LS and the Hemi are compared to the LT. With the LT, you can win the race on the bottom end. And this technology carries over to no matter what you do. If you supercharge it, turbocharge it, I was amazed to see how much there was out there for the LTs this year at SEMA. Now, of course, they're not up to the support of the LS yet because the LS is a mature engine, but they're going to get there. We've been doing the LT swaps now for about 3 years, and when we first got into it, just like when we got into the Gen 4 LSs back in 07, there wasn't a lot of information available, so a lot of guys stayed away from it. But now it's getting out there, and you're starting to see these engines find their ways into hot rods and resto rods and everything else. And there's a reason for that. If you watch my videos from 2.5 years ago, I was a little bit hesitant about what development the LT engines would have to go through. Fast forward 3 years, and I can tell you that the LTs continue to impress. No matter how heavy the vehicle is that we put one in, customers always tell me the same thing. Their vehicle feels light. It doesn't feel like it weighs 5, 6, 7,000 pounds. So we don't have to play by the same rules that we did in the old days. Even a 5.3 LT will haul a heavy JK today. And by adding the 8-speed and the 10-speed transmission, we're literally doubling the amount of forward gears we have to choose from, and even more if you consider the 4-speeds. Because GM added continuous variable valve timing and direct injection to these LTs, they were able to crank the compression ratio up. The vehicle I'm driving now with an LT1 has 11.5 to 1 compression. Compare that to an LS3 with 10.7 or a 6.4 SRT Hemi at 10.9. By having this extra compression, we can use it when we need it by phasing the cam. Having the direct injection going into the combustion chamber means more efficiency and more power. Now, some of you may think, well, this technology has been around for a while and there's 4-valve engines and overhead cams, and you're right, that's true. And we have smaller displacement, multi-valve direct injected engines that are performing excellent. But face it, our Jeeps are big pigs. They're heavy. They're aerodynamic bricks. So having a V8 means that we can run a lower stressed engine. I'm cruising along right now on the highway with little to no effort in this V8. I'm turning 1700 RPM at 65 miles an hour. So that means this engine is going to remain low stress and run in the long term. If you have a high stress small engine, let's take the Pentastar for example. We all know that the early Pentastars didn't have the greatest track record because of death tick and a lot of other issues needed to be sorted, and they are a lot more reliable today. Adding the 8-speed to the Pentastar and even the 9-speed made a big difference in performance. And we're seeing JLs right now running 37s with the Pentastar and the 8-speed just fine. Something that the 3.6 with the 5-speed and the 3.8 with the 4-speed couldn't do. But if you get a heavy JK and 1-tons and 40s and you're at high altitude, you're not going to beat the V8. And you take a direct injected V8 with CVVT and high compression, it is going to cruise over those mountain passes with ease, where the smaller high-stressed engine is not. Now that's not to take anything away. I think Chrysler made a huge step up when they went to the 8-speed Pentastar powertrain. But once you get in a V8 with an 8 or a 10-speed, and you realize that low-end torque and that sound, and the fact that you can literally climb mount effortlessly, and it's not just highway performance, it's off-road performance. You get one of these things off-road, you don't need 4 low most of the time. Throw that thing into 4 high and run trails all day at low RPM using the torque of the engine. Just like that 500cc 4-stroke motocross bike, you could go up the steepest mountains in the higher gears, where with the smaller 125s and 250s, you had to downshift. I remember back in the day, you used to call them thumpers because they just thump up hills, and that's kind of what the LT does. You get them off-road, get them on a trail, you put it in 4 high, you bring it down into first gear, and let's not forget that we've got a 4-to-1 first gear in the 6L80. We got a 4.6-to-1 first gear in the 8L90, and even a lower first gear in the 10L90 than that. Then when you're done running the trails, you get back on the highway, you got about a 0.6 overdrive. So I'm really excited about these LTs. I truly believe that these engines are the future in engine conversions. You look what's out there right now, whether it's adding a supercharger or a turbocharger or hybriding, this is all old technology. The LT has really introduced new technology that has real world benefits. So here's what I think you need to do. A lot of guys call me and they question me, what do I need? What do I want? In the earlier JKs where you're looking to save some money, you're just tired of the old 3.8 4-speed, by all means get an LS. It's a giant leap up. Now if you have a later JK or a JL or a JT and you want to stay legal and you demand the latest in technology, get an LT. Sure, go ahead and look at the Hemis and everything else that's out there. But I think when you do a side-by-side comparison and you look at the numbers and you look at the transmissions, there just is no comparison. But I do feel the LT has now been rationalized to the point that if you want a modern engine conversion, that's the engine you have to go with. So not only does the LT have the torque and the power and all the things we've been talking about over the last 3 years, but now it finally has a track record. By 2017, GM ironed out most of the issues that the LT had. Now let's talk about some of the newest technology. My sources at GM tell me that the 10-speed transmissions were very trouble-free right out of the gate, unlike the 8L90s. We got 3 or 4 builds in the shop right now with 10-speed transmissions that we're going to be talking about soon. I've got several calls about the new Iron Block 6.6-liter L8T. We're holding off on that engine right now. I think it's going to be a monster, but again, you can take this with a grain of salt if you choose. My sources at GM say that that engine is not taking well to modding. They're still trying to work out some kinks in the Iron Block, and it's not holding up like the LT1, LT4 blocks. We have such a diverse range now of LTs available to us. We have the L83, which in my opinion belongs in most JKs for just everyday driving. If you go with an 8-speed or a 10-speed transmission, you got 37-inch or less tires, your JK isn't a tank, the L83 is fine. Caveat to that is if your JK is on 40s and 1-tons and you live at 10,000 feet, get the 6.2. Just use some common sense. Now for the majority of you, you're going to want the 6.2 LT. Whether it's an L86, an L87, an LT1, these engines are just phenomenal. These engines have massive torque. These engines have the high gear transmissions. These engines are low stressed, even in a heavy JK with 1-tons and 40s. These engines have extremely good drivability. They idle at 500 RPM. They can be wheeled all day. And unlike, let's say, a Gen 4 LS or a Hemi where you want 500 horsepower, so you put a cam in it and you have that rump, and it's a little bit high strung, these engines are completely the opposite. They're as mild as can be. yet they will still perform with those near 500 horsepower crate engines of just a few years ago. So you're getting the best with both worlds with the 6.2 LT. You're getting the high compression, the continuous variable valve timing, the direct injection. You're getting active fuel management or dynamic fuel management depending on what engine you get. Not sure that's really going to be a big deal for any of you because the active fuel management and dynamic fuel management is a fuel-saving technology. It can be a little bit annoying, and it's not going to buy you 20-30% better mileage. It might buy you maybe 5 or 10% if your JK is very heavy. Don't fool yourself into thinking that a 10-year-old engine or old transmission technology makes sense in your 2018 JK or your 2019 JL. It really doesn't. So do your diligence, do your homework. Look at what the LT has to offer. Look at what the Hemi has to offer. Look at what the LS has to offer. Look at what the turbo and superchargers have to offer. Don't forget the transmissions. So we're going to hit the mountain with this LT1. Oh, I guess I should say a little bit about this vehicle. It is a late model JK. It is very nice. It is very tight. Customer did a great job building this Jeep. It drives straight, even under acceleration and deceleration. It has all the whistles and bells a lot of you guys put in. So we're going to see you soon with another test drive.